Good viewer, you are watching Xirtus.
Hello. Welcome to the Xirtus.
So I just want to pretend like nothing changed, right? Let's just go back to the way it was before the intro played. Just keep talking. Here, we're just having a good time.
I don't remember what we were saying. What were we saying?
So if we started with the Mormon retro videos, I don't know if Tom, you were saying that you watched it on the Hard to Find Mormon Videos YouTube video channel, but you were watching.
I didn't even know this existed, and I'm glad that you just showed it to me. But no,
you thought you wasted hours of your time? Just wait till it's days. Yeah.
The movie was called Saturday's Warrior, and it was referred to me by Heidi because she said that when she grew up, it was just like part of coming of age as everyone saw this damn movie. And it's about pre-existence and a bunch of weird Mormon stuff, you know what I mean? And there's an 89 version, and then I found out there was a Kickstarter to raise money to remake it in 2016. Really? So I saw that one too.
Whoa, I don't know anything about that.
I know you don't. I think I might be ahead of the curve on you in a Mormon movie for once.
That's pretty good. I didn't know they had a reboot. That's pretty crazy. Okay.
So you've seen the old one then, I assume.
Of course. Yeah. This is one of the most important ones, actually.
The 2016 one, it's like almost a beat for beat redo. Even though the same really bad jokes, they carry them over. They try to be a little bit more self-aware, but it doesn't work out. Did you just find the whole freaking movie? Yeah, this is it.
Is this an unintended comedy? Is it like hilarious, but it's not?
So this second one, it's like
comedy is drama
scale. It's like a 3. Like they know how cheesy the old one was, and they know how cheesy they're being now, but they're still like, we're gonna do it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like this looks worth watching. I wonder if this is available on BYU TV. Probably not, but I want to check it out now. It probably works way better if it's in other cultures too. Some of the things that seem like the worst movies ever, like you dub them, right? And then all of a sudden they work really well. Like this could probably be perfect in Spanish.
Well, this one was a little bit easier of a watch, but it's weird because the whole premise of the movie is that the son wants to sing this song called Zero Population, and it is like the most vanilla, catchy, Beach Boysy sounding song, but it's all about how they want to reduce the population to 0 or like reduce birth rates. Very specific.
Right, exactly. This is hilarious. I cannot believe.
In the first one, the only black guy's basically the bad guy. He's in this scene right here, and they're the ones that kind of tempt Jimmy, or they call him James, because James is like the bad version of Jimmy in this movie. And they're the ones that have the frayed denim jackets. They're the ones that have midriffs. Like you can tell when the bad guys show up because they're having fun and they're wearing like skimpy clothes.
Does this kind of thing actually convert people to Mormonism? Like, is it a recruiting video, or is it just like an after school musical special?
This is after school musicals. This is community. So like the thing is, you move to Utah, it's a community, and then you don't have to ever leave the community, and so then everyone has like to avoid seeing things from outside the community. So you have movies you make for yourself.
Oh, right. Derp alert. Okay, I got you. Yeah.
No, yeah, for sure. It makes a lot of sense actually. The only thing that's kind of weird about it is I hadn't thought about like the Lamanite like the idea of it being a black guy. Like that's kind of interesting. I don't know.
They have one good one, but in the 2016 remake, again, his best friend is like the only, well, not the only one, but he's the only actual like speaking character, and he also serves as this like temptation to sing about abortion. Like that's like the thing. He's like, yeah, you have to write this song and you got to sing it, and his family shows up and he sings it for his family, and they're like horrified, and they all leave. And he doesn't see them again, and his sister gets sick, and like she dies while he's gone, and he goes through like this crazy, all because he wanted to sing the song about abortion. It is like a weird fever dream of a plot.
Wow.
I mean, no, like it makes a certain amount of sense that he's giving into Lucifer, who's like in charge of music or something like that in general. So.
Yeah, but he also feels like so guilty because he comes from a family of 10, and everyone around him's like, ozone and oil and resources, and everyone should, they literally have like a decimal. They're like, everyone should have 1.7 kids in this world, and if we don't, we're gonna ruin it for everyone. It's
1.7. Shit, you want like a portion of a kid? What does that mean? What's
very Solomon? Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay. Somebody on Twitter went by Han Shlomo, which is a joke that I made a meme for like a few years ago, where I had like a coloring book of Star Wars, and I had like a coloring book of Solomon with the baby, when the two women bring the baby, which are supposed to be prostitutes, I believe, is the or at least one of them is a prostitute. I forget how this works.
Why do they want the baby?
Because one of them is their baby, and the other one, who the fuck knows? You know, but the question is whose baby is this? And we'll cut the baby in half, and you can have half, and so it's a test, obviously, you know the story. But like somebody went by Han Shlomo, and I was just like, oh my god, I never get the opportunity to fucking joke about, like scout, like looking for my old meme that I had, where it's like Han Solo was going to cut the baby in half with a blaster, and then it was just like, because Han Shlomo. And Shlomo's from Solomon. And so I was like, I don't know. I was like cracking up on it, but I was like, dude, this is all I get. No, because people don't know that Shlomo Solomon, I guess, most people. So it's like kind of too.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
What about Shlomo Gonzalez, Speedy Gonzalez's cousin? Is that also Solomon?
Was he Shlomo or was he Slow-Mo?
Well, I mean, potato, no?
I used to call my friend Justin Han Slow-Mo when he would be working on speakers, getting up early. You know, he was moving so slow. I was like, what are you, fucking Han Slow-Mo right now? But, you know, yeah, anyway.
Shlomo's temple didn't have the same ring when the Masons came upon it.
Yeah. Hey, I got a suggestion for a new rule for SyncTank. I think that if somebody makes an hour-long or more video that relates to us, that's like about us in any way, positive or negative, and they get over 200 views on that video, it should be an automatic invite for them to be a guest on SyncTank.
Yeah, new rule accepted instantly. Yeah. Probably doesn't even do
5 views. We should lower that.
Probably doesn't even have to do with the number of views. It just has to do with like, are they like?
No, because somebody could. If it's an hour-long video, I mean that's something.
Are they at least like kind of cool? Like I sound like, to me, it sounded. I was flattered. Like
it's totally flattering. Can we go over parts of that, or like, because I want to.
I hope we're allowed to. So this is something I wanted to bring up later because I wasn't sure how I was going to go. Because this whole video might get taken down if they decide they didn't want us to talk about it or something like that, right? Isn't that how that works? I don't know how that works. Like, this is this video. All right, people, for what he's talking about, there's a video out there that's not just about me. It's not just about David, not just about Jake, or even Tom.
They mentioned me. I'm like officially a part of this, like whatever is happening. Like I'm officially part of it now.
You're like 41 minutes in, right? Like I forgot where, somewhere around here. Like self-proclaimed singer. We'll get into that. Paranoid American. Yeah, I found you. Point is, we're all flattered. But this is Calcified Lies made this video on all of synchromysticism, the whole suspicious origins of the idea of synchromysticism. Like, we just talk about synchromysticism like it's just a thing, right? Like, what? How dare we? Like,
Well, there's a whole history, and so it's fascinating to
Yeah,
look
this
at
is
his
actually like
analysis because
based. Yeah,
yeah, I mean the
based.
question
I
is
love
it's the
it.
way that some of the terminology that he uses, like when he talks about Jake Kotze being installed and stuff like that, it's really interesting because like
Like, we
from
might misread that
our
in 100
perspective,
years.
like watching everything happen, we see like the organic nature of it. Like I go out to
No,
sync
maybe he means
cabin
like
events and sync summit things.
installed by Hashem. You know what I mean? Like sort of like a divine.
Right. Well, you know, Jake is an ayahuasquero, and Jake likes to go on like or in the past had like gone on an ayahuasca journey, like went into the snow, made a fire, sat like was in a sleeping bag around that fire with like a couple other guys, and they would drink ayahuasca, and then like the next day or whatever they would, this is my understanding of it, the next day they're like, we're gonna watch a Jim Carrey movie or something. Like they just and I used to have a strong aversion to Jake's definition of synchromysticism, and a lot of us did because it didn't always resonate. But it was this idea of seeing profundity in the mundane. And the more that time goes by and the more that I think about it, I actually really do like that definition. I mean, we're not, there's synchronicity, there's synchromysticism, it's open to interpretation. There's different, there is different definitions. Jake Kotze doesn't have the only one. But
Yeah, that's a question too, because it's like in terms of synchromysticism, we do put together and we do wrestle with this idea of like what are words, right? But to call synchromysticism just like just like kind of blame Jake is kind of like I wouldn't quite do it that way, you know? I wouldn't quite
right, but there's things that happen like
I would give him a lot of yeah, sorry.
When Joe made Back to the Future predicts 9/11, he was inspired by Jake Kotze's work more than anyone else, and you can hear that in the way that he does the narration, because there's specific points, even especially like when he mentions the Millennium Hilton and stuff, where you can actually hear he's kind of imitating Jake's style of narration. And so I actually, like, if he had listened to me, the video wouldn't have done well and probably wouldn't have gone viral, because before that video was released to the public, like I kind of reacted to it and I was like, man, do you really want to do it like a conspiracy video? Because the way he talks in that video isn't really representative of how Joe actually talks in real life. You know, like he kind of like he did like almost like a character to like do like a conspiracy internet video. And so I actually I didn't take strong issue with it, but I was like, do you really want to do it that way and like make these statements that are really like authoritative and stuff? Like, but if you would have listened to me, the video wouldn't have done well. So I'm glad that Joe does his own thing, but he was very much inspired by Jake Kotze. And that's why in the description of the video, like this guy points out, it says synchromysticism is because that was his inspiration.
Yeah.
Was Jake. And so,
Jake,
you know,
Jake offered like a great way to like look at like the navigating paradigm of whether or not you find causality, whether or not correlation is rational. Like you start to just organize and sort, and organizing and sorting is more objective. It's not conspiracy theory. It's like it's a new way to do things and to worry about what is the relationship and what's really going on. It's more like, here are the pieces. Like we know what these pieces are. And that's exactly what computers do. It's something that's really interesting to me about like data systems in general. And so it's a new and different way to look at synchronicity, but also that there's a mystical part is kind of the subtext of it's not all material. There probably is something kind of tying it all together, right? We don't know exactly what that is. And that's chill. That's a chill thing to, I don't know, I'm open to that.
The thing is that when I agreed with Bill to do a podcast, which was always record, when he approached me with that, and he approached Alan, you know, I was like, I got one major condition, and there you go, that's Bill for you. But speak of the devil. But you know, I was like, I don't want to do that thing that I'm seeing a lot of podcasts doing, even podcasts that I was a regular viewer of, which is starting out with your conclusion and then trying to back up that conclusion. I wanted to do a thing where we accumulate as much data as possible and discuss it to the point that the data can maybe even speak for itself. Like, does it require representation? And so like I have an aversion to that style where it's like somebody wants to assert something and just arguing all the time. Like I was like, I don't want to argue like what the extrapolation is. Like I just want to follow the rabbit hole and see where it wants to take us, because that to me is fun. Like projecting something and then arguing it, even if it happens to be true, is not as fun. You know what I mean? Like you can do that. I think
it's the same thing though. Like they're both the same path. It's just like one's going one direction.
It's a different approach to the same thing. It's true, but
Will,
Andreas was
Will,
mentioning
don't you dare watch The Acolyte without signing my petition to make R2D2 dubbed by Wanda Sykes. I am super serious. Sorry, keep going. I apologize.
well, Andreas, you were mentioning that like it's kind of like how data analysis works. There's something called back propagation, and this is basically when you know what the answer is, and then you figure out like what you have to tweak for the question to
arrive
be
at
able to
that.
answer.
But
And
Oh, this is the wrong one again. I like that. We should just watch like can we watch just like a second of this, or are we gonna get in trouble for this? We probably are.
Would we? I don't know.
Calcified Lies. Calcified Lies. I hope you get monetized and like promoted. Like everybody go
a viewer of
go subscribe to his channel. Everybody go subscribe to this channel that says that we're the devil. Like I'm for it. Like you've no idea.
After Alan Abadessa Green's Always Record Sync Book podcast fizzled out, David Plate, who goes by MK Ultrasound, and Will Morgan.
This is like a freaking roast. I feel like I'm like Rosie Cheech.
I love it.
Who goes by Meta Egg now, found a new home at SyncTank, or the YouTube channel titled Andreas Xirtus.
Yeah, he does the French pronunciation.
Apparently, David and Andreas are friends who live in Santa Cruz.
Oh, well, you know what that means.
California. According,
I really like it. I don't know. I don't want to get too like hardcore.
No,
like,
cool. But you know what? I wanted. Can I share a story that I don't?
They mentioned me
share
too
very
later.
often?
I would get my own section.
I'm really stoked on it. I have no idea.
I just responding like this is a great video to like use as kind of like here's a platform to respond to like every single part of that, because it's like I'll just say like like when you say when the SyncTank fizzled out, something very specific happened. I was invited to go on Red Ice. I went to a rave in San Francisco with my girlfriend at the time instead.
Calvin's like, they're probably not friends. They're probably lovers.
And so Bill and Doug and Alan, and was it Will too? I don't know if Will attended, but they went on Red Ice and it went great. And we started selling more sync books as soon as that happened. Like they were a really great platform at that time. And then it wasn't long after that. I'm talking like a matter of a month or two or something. I forget the person's name who is the top of Red Ice. Because Red Ice is mostly just provided a platform for all different types of people, and they just kind of did that thing where they let people give their spiel and they don't really react to it or question them too much generally. But
things were more chill back then too.
Right. So there was the person at the top of Red Ice, I forget their name, but they produced a 6-hour long like Hitler maybe apologist documentary, which was really interesting. I mean, I found a lot of fallacious shit in there, but there's things that I took from that to this day that I'm like, I actually did get some perspective on it, especially in terms of what socialism meant for early Nazi movement and all this kind of stuff. But Alan got freaked out, and understandably so, because he didn't want us to be completely like associated too much with Red Ice. And so he just basically decided one day that our Facebook group that had like thousands of people, he decided to do a thing where he was like, anybody who hasn't contributed, I think it was in the last 2 months or something, just gets automatically deleted from the group. And we went from like thousands of people to a few hundred people in instantly. And then he handed it over to me and Will. I barely do much for it. I think Will does a bit more. Sybil's in there. We got moderators and stuff, but it just went.
It was like a death of the group. Yeah, it was a bummer.
The
thing is, I've learned to really appreciate the people that remain. Like, that's the thing. It's true. There is like a smaller group of people that are a little bit more like Synchro Magician, net like or something. But yeah, the removal of all these people that weren't engaging, just because you don't engage, is kind of like being a silent voter in the forum, So it was a real bummer, because there's a lot of people that are probably like really like they're teachers, or maybe they are politicians or something like that weren't engaging because they couldn't be publicly seen. Maybe there's some guy who is in seminary school and he's studying synchromysticism, or
he have no fingers.
So Alan didn't want to deal with it. He was just getting overwhelmed by what he was seeing in the group from certain people, and he was just like, fuck this. And then I inherited it.
It was a hard time. It was a
And
contentious.
yeah, it was, and a lot of things happened during that time for a lot of people in similar ways. Like a lot of people had to cut off ties with friends and family and whatever because they're feeling different things and whatever. So I have sympathy for Alan with that. It's a bummer though, but this guy, it's fun to watch him trying to assess what the story is as an outsider.
Perspective. Sorry, go ahead.
What year are we talking right now?
2016, 17.
Yeah. The years of the frogs, bro. That was the thing. Everyone freaked out because they were talking about Egyptian magic, and it was this weird intersection to me. I thought because you had white supremacy was like they were ostensibly it was like there's a group of white supremacists, but then they had this idea that it was like Egyptian magic, which was practiced by the Kemetic people from the Congo, like essentially like they were more ancient proto-African magic. So this thing that's definitely not white or black, it's like a heterodox. And it's like, okay, oh, this is amazing. Heterodox. You have this inversion and integration. And a lot of the people doing it are so strongly moving forward, they don't have time to know what the other side is or what they are or what's going on. So it's just
this is like normie masonry.
Well, right. I guess because like people, no, it's like most people, yeah, I guess so. Because most people don't realize it's like the Shrekianism of Satanism. So where you get rid of the modern, you get rid of the contemporary secular Judeo-Christian values and symbols, and you figure out what kids naturally interpret on their own, right? And so in the lodge or in the secret society, you might produce like, or even beyond that, like Bernays might produce a secret message that's like, we're going to sell cigarettes this way, and most people won't know it, but a few people will know it. That's what the meme war was for so many people. They're like, I know what's going on, but they didn't. They knew like a small part of it. They understood like one level of a symbol.
Oh, right. Yeah. And I mean, that's for a lot of us who are into sync, like in that whole community, most people started with conspiracy theory. Yeah. And then they were like, and they reached a point where they could see that, in fact, there is conspiracies. They do happen. And we're finding connections that we couldn't, that conspiracy, people conspiring, like that intentional angle, wasn't really enough to explain it in all cases. And so we would, what the purpose of Always Record was, for the most part, was just to explore and find that line and try and decipher it from like a line in the sand versus like an actual distinction between what are, like if a mason builds a building and it's got all these measurements and they're encoded with meaning, like this is relates to the distance of, the earth to the moon or whatever it is, like that's intentional. But then beyond that, you'll have, oh, well, what is this sacred site's relationship to this other sacred site? And you're like, did this just happen on its own? Did they figure this out and measure this? Like where does intention end and where does the intelligence of nature begin? Because nature is full of patterns. How separate are we from that? Like,
does death of an author apply here?
I don't know what that means. What's death of an author?
Like, isn't death of an author the one where like you get to interpret somebody's work regardless of how they've written it? That's usually totally applied to some sort of creative endeavor, right? But could that not apply to a mason building a building and it being, like a certain amount away?
Sure, it's an old Kabbalistic story about the, about this.
That's the thing, though. Like we're building our lore. So the death of an author is like, this is post-truth, postmodernism, and the death of an author. I don't know. So we think,
I mean,
I like it a lot. I like what's happening. I just want to say it really quick. Is the idea that humans have become less and less interactive people that you spend time with, and more the memories that they're created online by propaganda. So the lore about a person outweighs your experience with the actual person. Eventually you become, and this is now everybody. So that started out with the death of an author or with the way people treated a celebrity because it was a unique experience, but now it's not. Now it's the most common experience. So it's really interesting to look at that saturated royal experience as how does that affect how we change based on our interactions, because our interactions are no longer based on literal interactions. They're based on these mythological interactions, which basically makes us super like ubermensch, right? Because like that's the pretender syndrome of Facebook. Everyone's happy. They're on vacation all the time. When they work, it's by choice, the whole thing, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, what you were describing, Thomas, although I'm not familiar with the death of an author thing, but maybe I
thought
am
you're the
more
one
than
that
I
brought. I
realized.
thought you are the one that introduced me to that. Maybe not. I guess not.
I don't know. But there's this
makes a lot of
idea
sense,
of like the Kabbalist who dies and goes to heaven, and he's talking to Moshe, and he's describing the stuff that he sees in the Torah as being so profound, and then he tells his whole spiel and 216 letter name and all this stuff. And then you have Moses just responds to him like, I never thought of any of that, but that's fucking amazing. You know, there's this idea of like that he didn't have to do it from an intentional place for it to still have meaning. And so, but that line, it's kind of hard to tell. And that's why I like to just let the data compile up so we can kind of like disseminate just on like as objectively as possible, you know?
Yeah, so that's why
Good.
we get in trouble with a lot of people because we're exposing information in general, right? That's kind of the idea. Like this is information. When I wonder about what it is that people consider a mystery versus a secret, because we're just saying these things, and I find that interesting because that should be. What do you think about exposing information that people are sensitive to? Like, what is this like giving people like a match in gasoline, or like what's the real problem here?
No, I had a debate with my cousin in Sweden last night about this topic because I was just like basically saying that, you know, Republicans and Democrats and people in general, Americans in general, they all know that they've been lied to about certain things. You know, and you can pick and choose which things it is that they believe that they've been lied to, but the American public knows that they've been not just lied to, but gaslit. And if you ever want to hope, if you have any hope to regain trust in the public in these institutions and these agencies, to come clean would be like a requirement to even begin to do that. Like you couldn't ever regain trust without admitting, just like in a regular relationship, like if somebody's lied and you know that they lied and you're just like, you know what, we can at least have the possibility to start fresh if this is admitted or if this is acknowledged. So like my feeling is like it doesn't matter how nefarious it is, it should be exposed. So for those agencies themselves, like if it comes from them, then all the better than just for people trying to search around in the dark. And so like, you know, it's weird to be on the other side because I do this all the time where I'm like analyzing, you know, all these different groups, societies, whatever, and individuals, and trying to like ascertain like what their real prerogative is, what their agenda is. And so when somebody, you know, turns it around on the messenger, you know, I kind of like this. Like I see it as totally flattering. You know, it's enjoyable to look at people's process around it because, you know, being on the other end of that and like witnessing what was like he mentions like Joe is in Tel Aviv. Like Joe got traded for basketball to play in Tel Aviv. Like he didn't seem to get that. Like he got a phone call and he had to be gone by the next day to leave from Santa Cruz to Tel Aviv. Like he called me up, he contacted me, and he said before he played a season in Santa Cruz for the Santa Cruz Warriors, he said, "Look, I got this list of places to play. If I play for Santa Cruz, meaning non-professionally, he could play professionally overseas, but non-NBA, if it's the one place he's being offered happened to be Santa Cruz." And he saw that as a synchronicity. He was like, "Wow, I know somebody from Santa Cruz." So he was like, "Hey, if I play a season there, can we produce a video together?" And we didn't really produce that video together. That's Joe's video. Like he had people help with the editing of the, you know, some of the effects that happen in it, you know, but like that was his mind and that was his own process. You know, I got to witness some of his process, but he would come over and just watch sync films with me every so often, you know, and he really liked the Lady Gaga, the Fame Monster with Metropolis, but you know,
Man,
it's just
like, but what, like, that's the thing. Like, how could you not, if you don't know any better, how could you not have
what?
Back to the Future predicts 9/11? Like, how could you not have a conspiracy about that conspiracy video? Like, if you saw this, I'm just trying to. It's hard to even say. Like, if I were a normal person, and I saw this video, my first thought would be like a whole other conspiracy. Like, why does this person know this? And is he working with, you know, the Robert Zemeckis himself? And like, you know what I mean? Like that would be my first
right
thought.
Well, this guy sat in on a study session, I think 2 actually, with my rabbi where we were going over 9/11 in the Zohar. And so, there's no mention of that in the video, and it's probably for the best, because I don't like where people go with that sometimes, because it's there, it's a prediction, like it's fucking crazy. But like, that's what was happening for me in my life at that time. Was I had 2.5 years transcribing 2 sections of text that gave the exact date, and it's this whole description of what the purpose of it is, especially in the commentary from the 16th century. So Joe got a little window into that while he was putting this video together, and I don't know the degree to which it influenced it, if at all, but it itself is a kind of a synchronicity, like we're looking at this text and this is where it's at. You just talked to Leo Zagami today. Yeah. Leo Zagami was the reason why I brought that to my rabbi, because he made a bold statement. And he didn't say where in the Zohar it appeared, but I had to do research to find the 2 sections. And we took the time to not just transcribe those sections, but just transcribe commentary that's never been transcribed into English as far as we know. And,
not publicly.
Not publicly. You can't, so, that it's just, Joe was going through a process at that time, and he came to what he came to, and he put it out to the world. The video went more viral than he was expecting, for sure. But he also mentions the timing of it, that's something to do with Trump. No, dude, the timing of the release of that video had everything to do with the date in Back to the Future 2, him trying to get that video done and looking good before that date got here. And so the reason why it went viral, one of the major reasons, was because people were looking up Back to the Future at that time, because they're like, wow, we're at the time where the movie takes place, where they go in the future. So it's like, that was his.
What does it mean? Yeah, we need to get him on the show. It's just really hard because it's real time, but like, let's do it. We'll get it together.
Oh, Joe,
next week, Jake is probably going to come on the show, so he can talk more about the claims of his.
I messaged him. Did you hear back?
Yeah, I just talked to him through Will on Instagram, so we'll do that.
Oh, cool. Nice.
So yeah,
I've bombarded him. I sent him a message on Instagram.
Me too. I was like, I know. I was like, dude, you're fake.
Twitter.
Yeah, it was hilarious.
Yeah.
David, in your Zohar transcription, like how much of that do you think could have, like, when you say it mentions the date and like all these other anomalies, right?
Yeah.
Could that have been done without you going in the way that you say you like to avoid, with like the end goal and then working your way backwards instead of like back propagation? Like, could you ever read it and then predicted it?
That's a great question. But the thing is that I did this along with my rabbi, who didn't even look at the Zohar like it had any prophecy at all, because it's not a prophetic book. And he has been studying the Zohar for so many years. And so, he acknowledged to me at a certain point where we were going into it that it's like, wow, this is really unusual, so I got to witness somebody else in the midst of it who was not approaching it the same way I was. Just like I think I was saying like last week, it's like we're transcribing something and it talks about da'at as grain, and that the grain went bad and this whole thing. And he's like, I know what you're thinking. And I'm like, you brought it up, man. I know you're thinking it too. So it's that kind of thing, where we're looking at something together. We're looking at it gives a date, and then we go further and find out, hey, this was adjusted in the 18th century by a rabbi to be September 11th, 2001 in the Gregorian calendar, that appears as a random date. And the way that he made that adjustment was based on that it says that this happens in relationship to the Sabbath in such a way. And he's like, this doesn't ever happen. So in the 18th century, this adjustment was made, and that's where it happens to land, with the destruction of these 2 strongholds, the destruction of a palace, and the killing of the king. But the thing is that in the commentary from Ramak, he says this isn't a physical king, like a person. This is Samael. So it basically says, on this day, the whole world sees Samael die, that the root of his power ends. But we continue to play things out as though we didn't know that, like as though we didn't see that. And so that's like a denial aspect. It's like, what you saw, because it's the power of Rome. Like, we are a continuation of Rome in this text. So it's like, and it way in the future. So Rome continues, and this is a blow to Rome. And it's also Tisha B'Av for the world. So, and they explain that in the text. So you're like, how the fuck do they know? Like, Gregorian 9/11 isn't the 9th day of the 11th month in the Hebrew calendar. It's ours, So, yeah.
Thanks, Mythic Last, for the 5 memberships.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so for calcified lies, Thomas, tell us about secrets, right? Like, sell me on secrets a little harder, because you're an actual Freemason, and we haven't quite all joined. I know you'd think we would have been Freemasons by now, but we're technically not. But we could join at any point. It's just the secret thing, right? And that
I'm
maybe
supposed to ask you, right, Thomas? If I want to be a Mason, I'm supposed to ask you.
To be one, ask one is the phrase. But yeah, I mean, he basically cut right to the chase. Me and David Icke have been in the same Masonic lodge since forever, and that's the main way that I get to him. But it's so far beyond 32nd, 30. I mean, that's normie Masonry. When we're talking above Memphis Misrium, so we go above the 90th degree. We get into like triple digits. There's some people that have got commas in their degree system. So I
and if you want to know more about that, you have to watch the Dr. Longo goes into really exquisite detail about
32,000 degrees. In fact, to be specific,
there's a lot of details. You get your pens out and write down everything you can.
The way I see secrets sometimes is like seed banks exist for a reason, right? Like, would you say there's a legitimate reason for a seed bank to exist? And if that it looked like you weren't necessarily sold, but like
didn't the one in Antarctica just like totally get fucked up and like all those seeds got destroyed? Wasn't there like the world's like biggest seed bank and it just got
this is what I'm saying is that
having a legitimate reason doesn't mean there can't be like legitimate reasons against it as well. But like there are reasons why someone would. Yeah.
Right. And the same reason that there could be a legitimate reason for a seed bank to exist, you could just keep extending that to say, okay, and it should be secret, and it should be secured, and it should be made sure that someone can't just come in and ruin the seed bank for everyone. So like secret societies and secret mystery schools, they're kind of like seed banks for ideas in weird ways because
One Ring to rule them all.
Well, that one is
keep
like
it safe.
That one conveys unknown power on its own. Like and that would be nice if the like human consciousness could actually just be stored in a physical object, and through osmosis alone, you just become enlightened. But it doesn't work that way. And my understanding, at least of Masonry and the whole analogies of foundation and building things, and like it's really about how fragile everything we have is, and like it could just be wiped out so easily. I'm not a big proponent of like the 100 monkey nonsense. It's like if you kill all 100 of those monkeys, the next one's not going to know anything about the freaking coconut or the rope or whatever the hell.
You don't know that.
Well, I feel like we could know.
Well, those are two different things though.
Well, maybe I don't know.
One thing is the 100th monkey, which is the idea that if there's 100 monkeys eventually that had figured out something, then it's kind of ambiently in consciousness while that's existing. The other is saying that kind of the children of the raised by wolves thing, which is that if something exists, will it go away, and can it go away? I think those both are true. Like 100 monkeys is a thing that happens. There's the wicker basket creating and all these things, monkey, like definitely there's something to ideas being transient, but there's also something to the fact that if you don't train the next generation, then the brain doesn't develop, right? And that's true for every species, it seems.
Right. I mean, arguably, I would say if you just hunted down every single monkey that knew how to weave a basket and took them out, then you could at some point push that back to the next time that wave comes along. I don't know. It's like a persistent thing that like
fair point.
And I feel like that's when you say, what do you think of secrets? I think that's kind of what some secrets are. It's kind of like that. It are the things that if they get too much profane like interaction and they're like prostituted, or they're gambling is a great example, like how every single one of our gambling activities used to be some kind of divination tool, the roulette wheel, the tarot cards.
Oh, sure.
Like every single thing that we use now to bet and get money off of has been prostituted from its original state in numerology and gematria. So now it's not only is it seen as like less than worthless, it's seen as a vice. And that same thing can happen to just about any idea.
Or isn't that just because like the mob is taking magic from people by like siphoning the magic through the
That's what people say about Burning Man. They say that Burning Man is like a siphon of energy, that you're like, you get all these people to do this thing out there and they're just exerting all this, and it's like some kind of charger. And then when they burn the man, they're literally like taking that energy towards something else.
Yeah, because instead of burning one pure Christian virgin, right, like in Wicker Man, you just burn the pure part of people, which is the art. The art is the pure.
Right. It didn't used to be as publicized when people would die at Burning Man, and then everyone got cameras with their cell phones and everything shifted. And I witnessed that shift because my first year I watched somebody die. So I saw somebody as because the man was set on fire. The Green Man year. What is this? 2008.
2007.
And 7. And so they basically, like, it was the last time they allowed this to happen. But that first year that I have, everyone charged the man after it collapsed. So as soon as the man went down, everyone just like ran around, and like I got my shoes melted. Like even the next day too, it got even worse because I like walked out to get shit from or not the next day, the day after that with the temple, because the temple burns and there's shit in there. Everyone's burned things for that.
Was 2007 the year where the guy lit it?
That was the beginning.
Of the week. Lit at the beginning of the week, and they had to rebuild the man.
That was I just arrived at Burning
3
Man
days
for the first time that night. The first night that I ever had a Burning Man after 8 years that followed. But the dude set the man on fire on a Sunday. I think it was Sunday night of the week before, and so it was like it was during the full lunar eclipse.
Right.
So it was like, and I could tell you more about that whole story, but
he was a vet, right? There's a whole bunch there,
right? So, but then at the end, I can tell you, I saw somebody fucking run into the man, like directly, like they ran into the fire and they just disappeared. And I was like, oh shit, they just got burned alive. And I'm still running because all these people are running. I was like, somebody's like moved from the pack and they're just running in. And I never saw that got publicized. But that was definitely like that person killed themselves in a fiery. It was like Saint Maud for them, you know.
Someone could have got a dope like alternate identity that day.
Maybe, yeah, I don't know.
It probably been like crap identity if they survive that. It doesn't seem good.
No, they didn't survive that.
No,
no one survived what I saw.
Yeah, I mean, someone could have inherited that identity. Like now, someone could be out there with like an extra identity to spare because that guy gave his up.
I feel like this is a great like question though. Everyone should ask themselves that, like, are you the good guy or like are we the baddies, right? Because like Che Guevara or something like that, and like, you know, Skull and Bones, like that's a good one actually. The White Kids, you know, with Are We the Baddies, because you have the Grateful Dead. The Grateful Dead have a skull, you know, with all his roses and everything coming out of it. It's really easy to like imagine how you might be confused about whether you're the baddie. And like I think about Che Guevara and Fidel Castro and anybody who is trying to be like the good guy, and like how if you become the thing that's in charge, right? Like it's the Oedipus thing. Like you rape and murder like your like you rape Mother Earth, you become your father, you know, like and then you end up destroying everything that you thought was sacred when you become the thing you hated, right? And
yeah.
How do you be careful not to do that, right?
Dude, I'll share this. I don't care. Like, so the woman I lost my virginity to when I was in Sweden, and this was in 1999. Her dad was fucking good friends with Che Guevara, and he had like photo albums of all these pictures of him with Che, and he was like showing me the album, and he was like, "That's his bed." He was like, I had sex in that bed. He was in the room. Like, he wanted me to know this shit. He was a trip, and he was all like stoked because I was American. He wanted America to, like, I could spend the night, and he was just like in the morning, and it'd be like, oh, good morning, you know. But yeah, whatever. But I think it does relate to what you're saying, because in this guy's mind, like the way that he, as a revolutionary of sorts in his own, you know, in his own experience, he saw Che Guevara as just like, this is a good, passionate guy that he had like infinite respect for, you know. And like what his experience is of Che Guevara, I have no context for that. I don't know what the fuck that would be like to be all up in that world like that.
Yeah, you do. It's that movie, The Producers, where they get like the German guys, like, he was a kind Führer, he was a good Führer. Like, it's exactly what that is.
Was it the same bed? Did you also get to bang someone in Che Guevara's bed, or is this long gone?
He showed me a photo album from like far in the past of just like him with Che Guevara in all these different scenarios. Like he was one of his close people.
My dad was in the Banana Republic somewhere with like Lockheed, you know, people who had like my grandfather and his father who had invested through Lockheed in some like Banana Republic thing, in a helicopter with a dude who was like pretty surely involved with, you know, like the Che Guevara assassination. I feel like that's and like for that dude who's making videos about us, like it goes back, like the whole world is like this. Like,
yeah.
But like
I don't know anything about Che Guevara. I'm not educated on him really. I'm very little
guy,
knowledge.
right? The Rage Against the Machine T-shirt guy.
I mean, like this, like super European, comes from like a French royal family, you know, isn't that like the thing? A lot of the characters are, but I don't know. I think it's just interesting, the idea of people that think they're going to be the good guy, because like, what is the good guy and like, what is the solution? It seems like I like the idea of telling people as much as possible. It still seems like that's a better deal, like more people knowing everything.
Yeah, totally. We should have Steve Wilner on sometime. I haven't talked to him in a long time. He's great. But
Yeah.
all the
Let's
people
bring, this is
have
going to
videos-
bring together all the sync people. This video.
Yeah, that's what I felt like. I was like, oh yeah, we should fucking have Steve on the show. He'd probably have a blast talking to us at this
Because he
point.
did a good job. Like it's like a
Yeah,
bibliography.
yeah. I don't. When I first met Steve, the first time I ran into Steve at Burning Man randomly one time. We spent the day hanging out together. But before then, I met him at the sync cabin thing, and you know, I smoked frog venom by the fire. Like,
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You did the
Bupa?
you did combo or whatever?
Frog
No,
or
I didn't.
toad?
I didn't do the one that you like put on your skin. It was a different type of. It's still from. It's from his glands or whatever, I guess. But I don't know that much about it. But I smoked some frog venom with Steve Wilner, and I was tripping out the whole time I was hanging out with him because as he would talk, I'd watch so much of his content as Labyrinth of the Psychonaut or whatever, and it was like I was seeing like a character that I'd related to online. It was hard for me to like process that he was actually like sitting there, like that he wasn't a voice on the internet. Like it was a very strange thing. Like if I just watched you guys on the internet for years and I never met you and then like hanging out with you, I'm like, you speak and it sounds like you're still on the internet. I don't know how to explain that, but
I only speak in 16-bit 44 kilohertz.
Sure.
Anything above that's a little just wasteful.
What do you think about? Well, all right. Is there anything else you want to cover on this subject before
Well, I wanted to ask you guys because you were talking about Burning Man and the release of the energy, and I always have this in mind. What is the actual tangible difference between the energy you get from a Burning Man and the energy you get from a Bohemian Grove? Is it the same energy for two different types of people? Or
no,
is
the same people. The difference is no, Dad. This is how you do it. That's the difference. That's literally the difference because it's the same people's kids, and it's originally even, and like it's in a really similar location. Even it's just instead of the Grove and instead of in Santa Cruz, they're going to the beach. Like actually, yeah, no, I think it's pretty much the same like value. Like except, yeah, no, because it's cremation.
Both started in San Francisco, and both started with like performance.
They're both care. They're both cremation of care rituals, though, because they're dealing. Yeah, the lover.
Right, and I guess the Bohemian Grove got co-opted in the late 1800s by the business people, and they kicked the actual Bohemians out, and then just hired them back. So I guess doesn't that happen to Burning Man too? With like Silicon Valley is eventually going to be the new.
Where's that?
Absolutely, dude.
Forbes 1999.
So that would sort of imply that there's another Burning Man, like a newer Burning Man that they were like, no, let me show you, Grandpa, how it's done. You know?
Oh, for sure.
Right.
Here's the Forbes article. It's from 1999, so it doesn't look very good online anymore. Someone called Burning Man the Bohemian Grove for the next generation.
Oh, wow.
I remember when I was 10 years old because we had Pigaloo, which are like my dad was doing this like web distributed video on demand company before people had high speed internet, which is a bad idea. But Burning Man, the Bohemian Grove, what's it called? ILM people were going there, and we had all these connections through Pixar and everything like that. So it's like we should go to Burning Man, and it was like this will be a great opportunity to meet people. This is 2000 and 2000, like 1999 to 2000, right? And this is the article before it. The original is a Northern California retreat founded in 1878 and still frequented each year by artists, musicians, heads of state, and corporate titans. Its motto, "Weaving spiders come out here," means it's not a place to talk business. But at both gatherings, webs are woven anyway. And the joke here, web, right? Every single thing, because Burning Man was where Silicon Graphics was meeting. It's where Google Maps, where Silicon Graphics stole Terra Nova, whatever Terra, like the Terra. The East German software that was for satellite imagery that Google Maps is stolen from, right?
It seems like Burning Man's missing that gentleman's agreement dynamic of
how so. Like, you're not allowed to sell things at Burning Man, so it's already clear. Like you're not allowed. It's not like a.
You're allowed to talk about it, right? In Bohemian Grove, some people don't even want to reveal that they're even in it, or even acknowledge that Bohemian Grove exists to some extent.
I don't think people talked about Burning Man as much until like 1999, in 89 or whatever. Sorry, like 95, 90, whatever. Like these, it wasn't. it wasn't as common that people talked about it.
Would it
And
be like a
less people
faux
were-
pas if you heard?
Yeah,
someone-
you gotta understand, dude, what Burning Man was. I feel like I've gone the fuck off about this before, but like for people who went to those early days of Burning Man that I'm friends with and what they describe, worlds apart.
Yeah.
You're talking people with fucking heads of dead animals on sticks as like shit that's
Which,
described.
frankly,
You're like,
we
are you
should have,
fucking for real, dude? Like how
Yeah.
this shit? Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
So
Burning Man's interesting for a lot of reasons. What were we gonna say about Burning Man a second ago? I forgot.
I don't know,
Reason we
man.
brought it up.
But yeah, the drive-by shooting range. Do you want to drive 80 plus miles an hour on the back of a Jeep shooting an AK-47 at targets in the distance? And
I'm
like,
in Florida. We don't need to do anything special for that.
you don't
Okay,
need to do anything special.
so here's the other thing. So when it was kind of secretive still, you gotta remember America was already going through this like libertarian constitutionalist freedom thing, which is like most Masonic state, America is Zion, and in Zion you don't have to be secretive anymore with your brethren. You can just talk about mysteries. So that was becoming more of a thing. South Park, Marilyn Manson, 1999, bro. 1999 is when they're like, look at how that article is written. Like they're not just talking about Bohemian Grove or Burning Man. It's both of them. And they're explaining exactly what both of them are in the article. So like this is 1999. They're like full transparency that's starting to emerge about this.
Yeah, whoever wrote this like knew exactly like they were writing it for a whole other audience beyond whoever the hell was reading it in Forbes.
Oh, it's Forbes? Oh, are you kidding? Yeah,
That was a 99 Forbes article. That's crazy.
It's a different tax bracket, but it's still the point is that they were saying that what if everything was in the open? What if you could have cartoons of Muhammad, right? That was kind of what was happening with South Park with the Paleontology episode. All the limits were tested at that moment. And Burning Man was talked about in like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. They're like the teacher. They're like, where were you this summer? She's like, I was at Burning Man. So these little seeds were left there, but people didn't know what that meant because there's not a lot of, you weren't allowed to take footage at Burning Man. That's another thing, right? That's why I was showing that. Why am I showing this? It was after that they stopped caring around 2007.
Right. So true. Yeah. And so that's the thing with Burning Man too, is that, people, you go out there and you have one week of your life that's like you'll be dreaming about for the rest of the year or the rest of your life. Like I will show up in Burning Man in my dreams like over and over and over again. And it's like, dude, that's for me, it's been 2 to 3 weeks every year. But like, whatever. The point is like that's like a small amount of time to be that fucking impactful. But like you couldn't live like that all the time. Like a rainbow family thing, technically, you could continue to exist out in that reality. Burning Man, you're like your resources or whatever you take out there, and you got nothing else. And so like there's no ability to really like continue to survive out there in large numbers over a long period of time. But Burning Man was never on the terrorist list. The Rainbow Family was number 7 on George Bush's terrorist list in 2002. You know, because
Burning Man is on a military base, and like you have to accept these are all important factors too. Like the fact that
it's legitimately on a military base.
Yeah, it's on a reservation on top of it all. So you've got the BLM, which is in control of it. So you've got basically a military dictatorship with a Napoleonic law under chieftain that controls the Black Rock City. And yeah, that's fish in a bucket, right? So like anytime people ever have problems there, it's because some like BLM agent like is showing up and like looking for people. And people are like agencies of various alphabet soups are studying Burning Man for all sorts of different reasons, right?
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah. I mean, it reminds me of an extension of just what you'll find when you look into the past about how different groups of people were
Black Rock City, right? Like I never really did that, but like come on, right? I was like, oh yeah, ha ha ha. Is it Black Rock?
Isn't that like crazy? BLM, Bureau of Land Management, Black Lives Matter, BlackRock, like property. Like what the fuck is Burning Man? But like we're all gonna live in this spot temporarily. Like we take up residence there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I feel like you can warn people at Burning Man, but you just feel like John the Baptist yelling repent.
So by making that connection and just running with that, because that to me feels like both of those things feel like a synchronicity.
Yeah.
Do we know the line that exists between Black Rock City and BlackRock, the fucking crazy corporation, and connected to Vanguard and all this stuff, or BLM as Black Lives Matter and Bureau of Land Management? Is that a sync, or is that a joke that's like people are in on? Like nod is as good as a wink to a blind bat shit. Like, because I honestly don't know.
Yeah,
Like
seriously.
and so I don't pretend to know. Is that it, like I get, but I think the thing is that like I say that and like people say I'm trying to distort or muddy water or whatever. In either direction, somebody could accuse me of that. If I said there was no connection, whatever, they could accuse me of hiding the connection. Or if I say there is a connection, oh well, you're trying to obfuscate it. Like I don't know.
I think it's worth it, and people ought to like look into it. And that's the thing. I didn't because I was thinking, okay, that's probably just a coincidence. And we ought to think, what if something's not just a coincidence? A lot more
detective type of thinking.
Yeah,
you know, like that's a detective mindset where you're like, I'm not going to just accept a correlation as it's just a coincidence. But like then we could get into like HIV and AIDS and be like, you know, well, they're obviously connected. We've proven that, but is it causal? Is this the cause of that? You know,
kids jumping from Black Rock to Black Cube. Well, if we're going to talk about Black Cube, we're about the hour. I was trying to be patient, but like, do you guys want to talk about the 3 goddesses of Mecca? How do you feel about that? Yeah, satanic verses. What do you think?
I'm open for anything.
I haven't actually read Satanic Verses before. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Let's just read the verse from the Quran that's been removed. This is way too weird. I thought I had a version of that wasn't so scary. That was like way scarier than I thought.
I thought that was porn in the background. I didn't know
what's the chance this might summon the demon.
Consider Owlet and Alza and the net, the third, the other. Is the male for you and for him the female? That then is an unjust division. This is Muhammad, peace be upon him. They are but names which you have named, you and your fathers, for which Allah has sent down no authority. They follow but a guess in that which they themselves desire, whereas there has surely come to them the guidance from their Lord.
Well, I could. That seems kind of.
Was that Lindsey Sterling?
That feels. I feel like that kind of level of pop does sound like Lucifer, and like that's how you can tell. Like if you get Lucifer to do Lucifer's own line, and it sounds like that kind of like I'm leaving you, God, because you don't love me anymore kind of vibe. Then it's a satanic verse. I could be wrong.
Totally. No, I think Kotze kind of goes there with Britney Spears and shit, where it's just like there's like something about the formula, like the science to actually like engineering a song so that it is an earworm, like to the point like you got a brain worm because the earworm is going so deep. You know what I mean? Like there's something to the like the actual like what goes into an earworm. Like there's something that feels demonic to me about just even that as an idea of like just removing any like ultimate like me like.
Oh, is that why like some of the like now you're making me worried, bro? Because it's like Footloose, and I should be afraid of music like the Amish now, not because I love jingles. Like maybe like I love jingles because it's a gateway drug to demons, bro. Come on,
we're in it. That's like you know that's a Kabbalistic issue. Is like this idea that what are the klipo? Like is this because there's different occultists will relate to in different ways. Like are these outside entities, the Sitra Akra, are they like something that we have to contact and like it requires this whole ritual around it to like invoke or evoke these intelligences or these entities or whatever? Then there's the idea that we're just immersed in this and that anything outside of the Shefa, anything that's outside of our emanated flow is an influence on our consciousness that is demonic. Like, are we are like we surrounded in the midst of this? You know,
he's saying Lizzo's the most disturbing sounds ever made. That's totally not true. Listen to Zebra Cats or like any number of other bands. But there is that one
prescription
song,
for Lizzo.
Why are men cray? Because they tell they gotta be gray. That's a banger. Are you kidding me? That's a great song. Like
I mean, but if you go both like the classical definition of a daemon, right? Like a self-regulating process in so many ways. Like, what's the difference between that sort of a daemon that's just triggered, like NLP style anchored to a little earworm, like the J.G. Wentworth song, or you know, O'Reilly Auto Parts or something? Because the whole intention of that is to put you into a certain kind of a trance where you're thinking about a certain solution that you didn't even care about before, and if you can trigger it at the right point in time so that everything else is aligned, like as you drive by and you remember that you needed windshield wiper or whatever, and then you get that O'Reilly, like that is kind of like a demonic
Oh, yeah.
process, right?
100%, dog. And the whole thing with like sigil magic, then, as far as like corporations are concerned, same rule applies. And then the fact that we have song and image connected to these things that have this agenda behind them, that we know that they're people trying to make money, or they're trying to
They used to
influence
outlaw
ideas,
certain
or
like modalities of music, right? Like you couldn't even like play certain chords, or you could get in legal repercussions, and you couldn't write music that
by
had
the
certain
by the
scales.
church, you mean, or what you talking about?
No, I think this is like Pythagoreans, I think, even enforced certain tonalities of music.
Oh, that's
Like
a
you,
different
you
type
couldn't,
of expression. That yeah.
because there were, it was said that like certain types of harmonies would bring actual discord, like the concept of being in discord as opposed to, like, you know, in harmony, is that
Right.
the society itself would be like some kind of a discordian society if they didn't adhere to a certain type of music, and that the music alone could like change, like the frequencies could change the way that people act at a massive scale, so they outlawed it.
Right. So like Kabbalists aren't like, there's certain words that you just don't say unless you're trying to invoke or evoke
I mean, this is
the
Footloose,
particular
right?
entity.
Are
So
we talking about Footloose
you wouldn't
again?
say Metatron, you would say Matat. You wouldn't, if you wouldn't say Samael, you'd say Samek Mem, or Lilith is Lamed Lamed. You kind of like just spell out the first letters of the thing and go on with it. But I always felt like that was kind of weird, because we have this kind of idea around Hashem that we don't say the you know, the name for those reasons, but then these are different reasons, like you're not looking to invoke this thing, but that becomes questionable when you're like, wait, are we immersed in this thing? Like, are we like existing with these entities, influential kind of things all the time? Like, if we're all up in it, then what the fuck are we talking about as far as like trying to, you know, maybe it applied at a different time and now we're in something else. I don't really know, but it seems like it's getting tighter, like whatever it is, it's straining, that energetic movement is getting tighter and tighter. But that's also like a sign that the thing could just break free at some point, you know, like a levee breaking or something. I don't know.
If they're that powerful, could they be bound by just like the particular consonants and vowels that you want to make? They're like, oh, they finally said it. Thank God this human finally said it in the right way, in the right vernacular. And they like what if you've got a speech impediment? What if everyone starts having speech impediments? Does that mean that no one would ever be able to summon a demon or even speak the ineffable name of God?
Well,
if they
that's
knew
what's
what it
been
was?
going on with RFK, is that he tried to in the past.
Oh God, that's a great example. Yeah,
and he can't do it because he can't pronounce those demonic names. He's tried, you know, so he gave up. You know,
it's hard,
you know,
dude. It's hard to listen to him for a length of time, man.
not
Like
for
I
me.
couldn't imagine like a State of the Union, and it's just like that raspy voice the entire time.
I don't listen to the raspy. I listen to what he's saying. I'm
I
so
can't.
focused on that it's like it's a processing thing. Well, I could have said the same thing about Eckhart Tolle at one time. Like,
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
listen
no,
to Eckhart
it's a fair
Tolle on
point.
tape and like the way that he talks, he's completely soothing. But I actually have a similar reaction, at least initially, because he has this kind of, I don't know if you're familiar with what Eckhart Tolle sounds like. Like, he's got this, it's extremely calm, but it's like requires me to be still to take it in. Like, in order to be receptive to actually hear what he's saying, I have to make an internal adjustment. And so I had to do that with RFK when I was first introduced to him, because I was just like, dude, I can't, is he just like a more extreme Alex Jones? What is happening here? You know? And so, but I ended up listening to more of it ended up, what is more predominant, my interest in what he's saying or my fixation on how he's saying it? So it gets me to slow down, actually. But I don't expect most people to be able to do that.
I
That's
feel
why
like
it's
I
amazing that
constantly
he's
need to
gotten
drink
to where he is in
liquid.
the first place. What's that?
Like whenever I hear him, I'm just constantly drinking something, because it's just like, oh, like I feel like it's in my throat. Whatever the hell is like he's going through. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's a disorder. I forget what it's called, but yeah, he's got a thing that developed. To me, it feels like symbolic of something too, of like just the strain that's put on like everything that's trying to get this out. Like, where are we at? Like, it feels like it's more, if you follow that anthropological idea that the health of the king is connected to the health of the kingdom, him trying to communicate and having a hard time feels like as like applicable to that symbolism as you could ask for. Not to mention the crazy synchronicities that all surround him in his life, like the issues around Palestine. And you're like, didn't a Palestinian like try and kill his dad or whatever? It's like all of this shit is just so wound up with sync. And then you look at the guy and he's over there, is in the video that this dude just made about us. He goes there talking about RFK and the fucking him talking about the scarab and sync,
Right,
and which is
cool. That's
where
cool because he
coined the
made,
term, yeah.
because that's the thing, you charge a symbol. So he made RFK Jr. into a synchromystical symbol, which wasn't done yet. And now all of a sudden, because we've tied it with X-Files and everything else, isn't that true to an extent? Like RFK Jr.
For me,
is
he's
now
been that symbol before he was running for president. And so, like,
a
I've seen
symbol,
him
but like as a synchromystical symbol,
as a synchromystic. The moment that I heard him say that in the first place,
and,
about the thing with the
and on
beetle,
top of that too, if we were to say the King Kill 33 ritual has any like power whatsoever, you could almost assume that there's the scale of like the whole world or the whole country, whatever, but it would also kind of reverberate just through the familial line, right? Like the King Kill ritual happens at the family level and it happens at the country level, does it not? Or would it just be applied to one, particular ambiguous area?
I have a question for Memory Man. Does he say the same stuff about Trump and Biden, who are like both like proud admitted Zionists? I'm just wondering.
I'm pretty
because
sure
I take a lot of issue with certain things with RFK too. Like, I don't like, it's cringe to me when he starts on with certain talking points and stuff. But at the same time, when I compare him to almost anybody else in politics, I appreciate what he has to say about the matter more, because he's actually like, there's places when he's pushed where he starts acknowledging certain things that I've never fucking heard out of Biden's mouth. I've never heard out of Trump, who moved the fucking embassy to Jerusalem's mouth. Like I don't, I'm like, I don't see why this whole thing of like, well, fuck him. It's like, you do the same thing over the other two major candidates because they're worse. So like, if you don't, and I'm sorry, like, I don't like the lesser of evils thing either, or the whataboutism, but seriously, what about these motherfuckers? Jesus Christ. So
I think he does, yeah, doesn't he? Or well, no, what?
Trump did a little bit of that. That's where like
he doesn't like Trump.
Okay, we're good. We're good. Just I just want to put that out there because I'm just like, seriously,
on that point though, man. On that point, Trump said a couple of things when he first started running that no one else had said up to that point. And one of those was one of my favorite ones, though. It was like, you don't think we're killers? Like, someone was talking about some other military, and he was basically paraphrasing. He was like, dude, our CIA's been, taking people out left and right for longer than I've been around. You know what I mean? Yeah. So what's the point of bringing this up? And it was crazy because you have like a bunch of like pro-patriotic people that didn't know what to make of that, because on the, like, it's the same concept you're talking about before, where once you expose the thing, now people are forced to, like, it's right here in your face. We've acknowledged it. It's at like the national level. What are you going to do about it? You're either going to be like, oh, I never heard about that. Oh no, we don't have killers. You know what I mean? Or you're going to be like, damn, I guess we really do. And it kind of and I mean, in so many ways, he had so many of those like weird little things. Not that you deserve to be a freaking president just because you call out the obvious, but it was noteworthy. Like, it stood out because it was like, whoa, I've never heard that at this level before.
Right. Well, Trump was full of things that were unprecedented, no pun intended. I agree with Dave Chappelle about his take on Trump. Like, why the fuck? How did this happen? He's like, there's the guy who walks out of the house, the mansion, and all the people outside of the mansion that have all kinds of ideas about what the fuck goes on in that space. And he's like, oh yeah, I know all about it. I just walked out of it. I'll tell you, everything you were thinking, that's fucking true. And it's like, people have been waiting or wanting somebody to fucking do that. So
him and Michael Moore, bro,
in that specific way. What's that?
Michael Moore knocked it out of the park when he put like his warning out, and it ended up kind of like that, like his explanation of it, where Trump was just a middle finger to everything else that you'd seen come before it. That was such a perfect analogy of like what that, and I think ironically, Michael Moore phrasing it that way in a way that people could immediately be like, oh yeah, it is kind of like that. It allowed people to like integrate that shadow work. You know what I mean? They were like, oh, I guess I really do got to do this.
We need a song that's like cruising down the highway a little over 55 when I saw the billboard opportunity of my life. Da 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 da. Just a billboard that reads, I like Ike. And then you go, I like Ike, I like Ike, I like my Coca-Cola, and I like Ike. And it would be all about how you've taken nightshades and you're smoking like all the scopolamine, and you're drinking like Coca-Cola, and you're eating like ketchup on French fries, and you have more and more scopolamine in your system, and you're going just fast enough that you can read the billboard. And it's not like 4 out of 5 doctors recommend anymore. Now it's just a simple slogan that just says, I like Ike. And you do, all of a sudden, right? Like that's
right.
That's really, I think, what people miss about America, and like the lack of like people looking at what's happening in synchromysticism. They're just like, oh yeah, I accept it. I do like Ike. Don't
Yeah.
do that. Right.
Well,
Well,
a
we
little bit of hellfire in there too. And scopolamine is like just puts you in a state of terror, like perpetually. You know.
no.
Is that
Like a
what it
little
is? I
bit.
thought it was just more like almost like GHB or something that you
Yeah,
can't
if you
completely like
know,
you're
well,
susceptible
you don't know
to
you're
being directed and you're kind of like out of it or whatever. You're like
that.
it's like a hypnosis drug. Is that
Right,
like I can see
exactly.
like people that Darren Brown fucks with kind of look like they're on that maybe.
Yeah, it's more like you don't often know you're on it is the thing. And a lot of people I would argue are on it all the time because if you think about the American diet, nightshades come from tobacco and from the belladonna nightshade, but they also are in all nightshades, so all scopolamine plants, and particularly ones that are picked green, so like potatoes, tomatoes, tobacco, eggplant, chili peppers, things like that they ship to your store at Walmart and Safeway, whatever the heck. They have more scopolamine in them because they're picked green, which is when the plant's saying don't eat me, and it puts out this poison, right, which is really bad because it's deliriant and will kill and blind animals. But for humans at the lower dosage, it just makes you so it's not an upper, it's not a downer, it's not a psychedelic, it's not a it is a deliriant. So you don't realize, you're like, of course people are green, and that makes sense. That's kind of the kind of drug it is. And if someone tells you, yeah, you're supposed to empty out your bank account, that's often what it's used for in South America. They'll blow it in your face and they'll tell you, yeah, you need to empty out your bank account for your mom. And you're like, oh yeah, of course. So, you know, it's a great drug for like the CIA or the OSS and the FBI and the, you know, the Pinkertons. Even before that, we're really big fans of using it.
Is this why you're supposed to avoid the green chips in the bag? Are those like the scopolamine chips?
I mean, careful. Yeah.
Did I ever tell you about the guy that we hired for security for we had this rain dance camp out where he was like actually he trained the Black Rock City security guys, like those the Rangers for like, but he had experience with what do you call it, where you're interrogation for the Marine Corps overseas and all these different situations, whatever. And he went by Wild Child, but I think his name was actually Marshall. Anyway, yeah, we hired this guy, and Tipper was playing, and I was away from the stage, and there was this dude who was interviewing him from this kid was from UCSC, and he was asking this interrogation officer all these questions, and he was being really fucking judgmental over this guy's whole past and like what he was a part of or whatever. And he had this little paper and he's taking notes or whatever while he's asking the guy these questions. And the guy just like, I watched it for like a while. He just went on and on for like over half an hour. And then eventually the dude, he just pulls out like a fucking jagged edge knife and he fucking grabs this kid and he goes, look, if I stuck this up in your asshole and asked you if your name is Susan, are you going to tell me your name is Susan? And this kid just looked like he was terrified. He was like, Susan. And he was just like, and he goes, what? And he goes, is your name fucking Susan? Like, and the guy was like, yes. And he was like, that's all I ever did for interrogation. That's why I fucking got out. He was like, you go back, you tell your fucking professors that, because it wasn't anything more than that. We never fucking cared. He was like, we always had the information that we were after in the first fucking place. We was just sadistic. And I was like, and also all these people sitting around got all super pissed off and were just like really uncomfortable, including my old boss from Green Cab and before I worked for him. And he was like, that's not cool, man. I was like, dude, you never fucking hear that from the horse's mouth. Like, you should just consider yourself fucking grateful to get an inside view of what the fuck goes on. This guy let me into Burning Man when I was with somebody who didn't have an early pass, like years later, and we went and we tracked him down, and he remembered me because I was just like,
dude, this reflects something that I didn't go over these because I didn't take the anthrax thing. Anyways, I remember because I was reclassified as an MP, so I was being trained as military police along with everyone else in the whole side of the barracks I was at when I was in San Antonio. But there was people, it was Army, Navy, and Marines, and we're all being trained in the same kind of areas. And I remember the guy that was right next to me, he goes to Gitmo, and he's over there for like 3 or 4 months, and when he came back, it just rocked my entire perception of the military. He comes back and he was like, bro, this is so great. If you want me to, I can get your name in and you can get sent over there. I'm like, what the hell are you talking? I'm going to Gitmo. And he was like, no, you don't get it, man. Like, they let you break fingers. You can just break people's fingers
they do.
all the time. You don't get in trouble. It's like the greatest thing ever. And I was just like, this dude is literally 20 feet away from me every night when I'm asleep. And like,
Oh,
he
God.
can't wait to just break fingers because it's legal, because he's in the military getting paid for it. And he's like, it was a weird thing. I was like, God, how much of an idiot am I that now I'm in this situation surrounded by these people? Like, there's a lot of them.
Oh my God.
It's like that scene with Christopher Walken and Annie Hall, and he's like drives him, and he's like, sometimes I think about just veering into the oncoming traffic, and he's just like, I gotta stop hanging out with boys. Okay, so Satanic Verses for a minute. I don't know how long we can handle it because whatever, but I think it's interesting. So the idea goes that, and we talked about, Leo and I talked about this today, that Muhammad, peace be upon him, the prophet, said a verse which we read earlier. Have you then considered Al-Lat, Al-Uzza, and Manat, who are this goddess of war, that goddess of might and protection, and her goddess of fate, fortune, time, death, and destiny, which makes Manat sound like my kind of goddess. Actually, I think she sounds pretty cool. But he
OP.
talks about them in a pretty good, OP. She's OP, exactly. And this verse kind of says as much, but then also gets sort of Gnostic. It's the exact opposite of what Islam and monolatry of Yahweh and for the Deuteronomist is, because it says, is the male for you and for him for the female. This is unjust division.
Oh, I get where you're coming from, Andreas, because I was watching you earlier with Leo Zagami, and you were showing the thing with Allah, and you were making an argument about maybe the phonetics.
Yeah.
And he kind of corrected you when you said Yahweh, but you have a basis for that, because you're saying it's duplicit. It's difficult to describe that, because on one level you're talking about a one God. You're like, oh, people worshiping one God. But then if you're talking about Elohim, you're talking about something that's plural, male and female, as one though. So is it really even duplicit? Like, it's like there's like, because that's the thing with like the Torah's explanation of it before the split of the Adam, you have this kind of like this composite character. Plato talked about that in the Symposium. That was actually the basis for Hedwig and the Angry Inch, was Plato's Symposium.
I'd like to find a picture of this. It isn't so terrible, but that's awesome, by the way. Hedwig and the Angry Inch, really? That's hilarious. Plato's Symposium.
Yeah. Because if you'll see it, and also I theorize that Wilhelm Reich's The Mass Psychology of Fascism was also an inspiration for a certain part of Hedwig and the Angry Inch. First of all, thing for people to realize about Hedwig and the Angry Inch, that is not a good place to point to for like, if you're like a trans activist or whatever, and you want to this be some like kind of like pride movie. Like, he was mutilated. That's like the point of the fucking movie, and he has to live with that in order for him to have gotten out of Berlin. And then it's a really like sad story, because you're like, he gets mutilated, and then and then all of a sudden he didn't.
It is the best trans movie. It's just like people don't like trans movie that people don't understand what it's really
right.
about.
If you follow,
are we pretending that Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, just doesn't exist right now?
I love that we're talking about this instead of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
No, it's that line in what you just read that was talking about the male and female aspect of the.
Oh no, you're right. That does track.
That's why I was saying it.
Yeah. And just okay, fair enough. That's a good point. Hedwig and the Angry Inch was that song where when the world was one.
The Origin of Love.
The Origin.
So
of
like,
love.
I recommend if somebody wants to like it sucks because the clip is usually shortened, or they're like, if you go onto YouTube or whatever, you can't get the full thing always. But so this image, it's like, it reminds me of what Wilhelm Reich was saying about the swastika being like, you have the SS symbol as two people spooning, and then you put them together and they're fucking, and then that's a swastika. But like that was something that Wilhelm Reich argued was subliminal with the swastika and SS, and the way that this is treated, because you're looking at Berlin and the divide and the wall, and then he's articulating this, playing this kind of allegory out of that wall existing inside of himself. And so, it's weird. Like, when you go back in time and you apply these things, it's like, it's Pat or this or Priscilla even. It's like the treatment of all of that was not, there was no infiltration of another movement. It was the movement, but like, there's all these levels of reflection that were happening at that time, like in the past, that I don't see happening as much now, at least on like a larger social level. I don't know.
Priscilla stood out to me, at least, because it was like, before anyone can accept transvestites or any other, variation of that, they have to be portrayed by famous straight males. Like, you have to have straight dudes watching other very straight dudes be gay, and then they'll start to accept part of that. They couldn't have just gone right into RuPaul's Drag Race.
I don't know. I think that if you look back at drag movies, like British drag movies from the 50s, they come out of military films, and there's a lot of it is the USO show, or the, I don't know what the British equivalent is, but yeah, military. I think military homoeroticism in military,
like the naval crossing ceremony.
It's just reasonable. Like, you got a lot of guys alone, like far away,
Yeah.
and like their relationship, and this goes back, right? Like, so military is such an incestuous thing that you have people taught to do this, going back to Athens. So I think it's reasonable to see homoeroticism in the military. I mean, this is what Hitler,
but I mean, to like culturally, America as an entire culture, to like start to make that winds of change, you have to start with, oh, here's a normal person that I already identify with, starting to go down this other path that I've never identified with, and like it required that. I don't know. That's why Priscilla seemed like it stood out in a weird way.
Yeah,
I think after military times, gay culture is more pervasive in secular culture. I think that's the next.
Military is the gayest thing I've ever done by a wide mile.
Yeah,
of course.
And like, so right after a war, like there's a lot of like spanking bottom content that just emerges in media. Like, I see that all the time. Like, after the 40s, after the 50s, 60s, after the 80s. Like, right. Like, this is also interesting to me, is that the 1890s are called the gay 90s, like the roaring 20s or whatever. The 1890s were the gay 90s. So I find that the 1990s being this post-HIV and like very gay decade, right? I think that's related also because there's kind of predictive programming there. But
yeah, I mean, my feeling is like that there's multiple things happening at once or whatever, but there's examples where with Hollywood, because I have my criticisms of Hollywood, for sure, but like especially a lot of the Kathleen Kennedy stuff. I think you like it, Andreas, and that's fine. To each their own. But I like it in principle. Like the idea of Star Wars, that the feminine taking, like, symbolically, it totally follows. And so
I like some of the things Kathleen Kennedy's name is associated with from like the 80s and 90s. Of course,
we all do, don't? Most people do. But I guess what I want to say is, I think that Hollywood has actually been really good in certain respects, even fucking Disney, for getting people to like consider what it would be like to be in another person's shoes, to use To Kill a Mockingbird terminology, like to have empathy for somebody kind of requires, you're like, because you entertain it when you're watching a movie, or at least some people do. Like, if you get into it and you have this character and you in your life have no place of really relating to this character, but you can still like kind of put yourself into their position, I think that that's a good thing. And so, like, I think that Hollywood has done good things for us in certain ways, but that kind of gets obscured in the midst
can
of
be
all
a good
the
thing.
bullshit.
A story
could be a net negative, if more than a net positive.
It could be a good thing, because you can have a story that teaches people how to interact. Like, okay, well, like Kevin Smith has in Chasing Amy a scene that a lot of neckbeards. No, I didn't mean it like that. But you know what I'm saying? That sounds like a thing. I'm sorry, but like, like there's a thing where Chasing Amy he says to Chasing Amy like this like romantic line, and then like everyone's like, "That's beautiful, man. Now I know what to say to my girlfriend." Like, that's the kind of usage that I think is okay. For the most part, they don't teach people how to improve on their circumstance. They teach people how to misunderstand, discommunicate, and then you get to see what happens when an emotional drama plays out because of miscommunication, right?
I agree with you. I just don't think it's an end. I think it's like a step in a certain direction, because we're kind of like just developmentally, like we use whatever is put in front of us, and it can go in different directions, like however it is that we're relating to it. Like, there's a certain malleability with media. That's my interest in synchromysticism as it applies to media, because I like to relate to something in my own way and not have to be subject to whatever somebody tells me. I'm so like the programming, like I'm supposed to just like let this in and be like, vulnerable or susceptible to those influences. Like, if that's there, it shouldn't have to dictate what you take from it. Like, you're your own person with your own perspective,
Right.
That requires a little bit of consciousness going into it to like.
Yeah, you shouldn't
be challenged by it.
You should be one
Right.
character. I don't like I think this is what's dangerous is when you approach a story that you're a single character in the story. You should look at it like all of the characters are aspects of yourself, or at least of the person who made the story, if you can separate it. But you should see it that, there's this smart character and the dumb character or whatever. Like, obviously, this is the fantasy parts of the writer. And it's crazy when someone's like, oh, I can be that friend. I think that's disgusting, because then you end up actually romanticizing the mundane that they've created for you, and you become the Office character. And they're like, okay, well, if I had to be, since I'm living in this bureaucratic nightmare, if I had to be an Office character, I could be that one, because that one's not so bad. That actor's portraying the most romantic version of the person Xeroxing. So I think that's dangerous.
But aren't like every week, aren't we kind of like playing out something like in Stalker? Well, you don't know where I'm going with this. Like in Stalker, where it's like, in Stalker at the end of the movie, when they're just sitting there and they're having a fucking conversation, and you have that question: did they ever leave the table? Is this what it looks like to express them having like a psychedelic communication, and then they just go into this other realm? Like, because that's what Stalker feels like to me. Is it's like, did any of this ever happen? Like, did they ever go to the place? Was this just what their existential conversation was experienced as? I don't really know. But
the final scene of Sopranos comes to mind. Like, did they just keep talking? Were they ever in that restaurant to begin with? Like, what the hell happened there?
Yeah, somebody brought up, said Holy Mountain in the comments, and or not Holy Mountain. They said Hollywood. And Hollywood, Holy Mountain, Marilyn Manson and Hodorowski, like the end of the Holy Mountain is that they flip over the table, and he's like, it's all Maya, it's all an illusion. But like, I think that like that's kind of like that is going to happen to us with the internet. Like the nature of what the internet is, that it's like a giant fucking mandala that we're all contributing to, and that's something about like it, like the interface being lifted, that that there's something transformational that's kind of stewing, like it's on its way there. I don't know how long it's going to take for it to percolate and explode, but it feels to me like we're all putting all this energy into something, and that something's going to explode out of it. And that's like, that it's such an illusion that we've all been relating to.
It better be the satanic verses. I'm saying, man, like these three goddesses are really like not, because Allah just named them, like you named them, it's not Allah's name. They're like three aspects of one crane. The three aspects of the femininity. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Are they connected to Tecate? Or not Tecate? Not the drink. The other Hecate.
Yeah, I would think that's reasonable, right?
Calling it a fucking beer.
Because what is Hecate's head look? What does it look like? Ask Alan. What do we got here? How many heads? How many heads do you see here? Uno, dos, tres. It's the three-headed goddess, yo. You found it. It's Hecate. Hecate is the goddess referenced by the satanic verses. Yes.
In the underworld.
Yeah, it's not Hermes Trismegistus.
It's weird that she has like the Lady Liberty spikes on her head like that.
I think it's hot. I'm a big fan of that look. I like it.
Is she a crust punk? Is that what that is?
I think solar punk. We should have really talked about Solar Kids, right? What's the movie? Solar
Babies.
Solar Babies. I'm sorry. We should have talked about Solar Babies. That's terrible of us.
And Saturday's Warrior.
Oh yeah,
but I'm actually. If you want to join, but we're gonna be talking about that for a couple hours, I think, next week.
Okay, that's legit. I don't know. I think it's interesting that the Quran mentions essentially that these three goddesses, the Meccan goddesses, are really one thing, which is the divine feminine, and that is like Hecate, because that comes up in sync a lot, especially with Alan. So I wonder what you think about that.
There was a weird thing where she was supposed to connect to that underpass where Princess Di died,
right?
Where like that apparently there was some like Hecate worship that went back to that particular spot somehow. That was a weird rabbit hole I went down years ago.
Spooky. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I wonder about that, because like you don't talk about the divine feminine in Islam, and in general it feels like the divine feminine is kind of hidden, and it makes sense when you look into what they say about Hecate, because it is like you got wisdom and chaos, and the OP death, like, right? Drugs, moon, graves, ghosts, night magic. This is the wiki page, so I find that kind of interesting. Do you have any thoughts on Hecate, Thomas? Have you thought about her ever?
I mean, constantly, but I usually equate like you play kind of a game of like this god is this god is this god forever and ever. But it seems that like the male gods got obfuscated around like Carthage-esque time, where then all of a sudden it became Baal, because for the longest time it was Baal and his consort, and not just Ishtar, but there was I'm trying to remember the actual one that the Carthaginians left it at. Her symbol sort of looks like an all-seeing eye on top of a pyramid. um and at this point, when the male gods start to take on all of the attributes of the female, this it almost feels like this is the real secret society, and not in a explicitly a holy blood holy grail way, where the Catholic Church or whoever ends up sort of cordoning off all the divine feminine things into its like underground lair, right? So the Hecate is sort of the state religion going underground. So at the fall of Carthage, the fall of all of the Phoenician sort of rites, that was the moment that not only did you stop doing anything related to divine feminine in public, but you didn't do anything in public. This is when all of those secret society and all of the rituals were only be able to done underground and by like a certain class. Up until that
Dude,
point, you did it in public. Like these were state-sponsored religions.
Nick Jr.
Right, but what state sponsored meant at that time, I think, could be a little misleading if we're just equating it with what we know state sponsored to mean now.
My understanding is that it was literally part of like the taxation, like your sacrifice directly went to like the priest class, and when you were sacrificing, like they actually had it written down, like how many portions of a cow or a pig or whatever animal that you were bringing to, and then the idea was that not only were you paying the priest class, but then they would almost like dole it out to anyone else that needed it. So that was like this like socialist system mixed in with the regular social culture, mixed in with religion, mixed in with morality. Like everything was the one thing. So when you did a sacrifice, you weren't just sacrificing to the god and hoping that rain would come. You were also giving food to the priests, and like they're kind of taking their cut all the way up to the big man. You know what I mean? Because that was like their profession. That was my understanding, is that it was so interwoven, and that was another one of those things that when Carthage fell, that direct of like, here's this goat that I just gave to the guy, and I know the guy, and he's in the city, and now I see that person eating. Like you actually saw your direct contribution, and it gave you like a sense of what you were contributing was actually building up the community you were part of. And then that gets obfuscated. So now all of a sudden it's all underground.
Totally.
It's all just like pieces of metal that going around. You lose all connection to what your effort and energy actually gets stored into. And that is advantageous to someone that wants to corrupt that system.
Dude, I couldn't agree more, Thomas. You said that well. And also that kind of relates back to kind of what I was saying about Burning Man earlier today, about like you redirect, you obfuscate, you do these things. It seems like you find these cases where the sex will change over time with the Greeks and the Romans from whatever the associations were prior. So like, like Eddie would talk a lot about Saturn stuff and the Saturn cult and all these kind of things. And I'm over here like, dude, Saturn was associated with the sacred feminine, like before it was attached to like Kronos and Saturn by the Romans. And like all that symbolism that's tied up in that feels like it's not just a reversal. It's like they twisted it in such a way that it feels like old school programming of association and like the treatment of the thing. It almost reminds me of like the way that we called Desert Storm shock and awe. It's like where it sounds, are you saying Shakina? And then you look at like even the Israeli military sometimes will have weapons that they'll give names that relate specifically to the sacred feminine. And you're like, why would they apply something that's so destructive with this? And it almost just feels like this really fucked up joke that like seems really like kind of obvious or whatever, but it's like it's so destructive. Maybe it's not that dissimilar from like Gilda being written on the atomic bomb in reference to Rita Hayworth. Like maybe there's something to that, like that men being like, we're doing this thing and it's fucking women's fault, like you fucking, it's like out of like sexual tension or something, we need to drop bombs, but like I think that it just applies too in general with like the way that we treat war as like getting laid, and so all the symbols get reversed into it. You'll find this referenced a lot in like ancient Kabbalistic texts where when they talk about the Klipot, because they're a reversal of Tetragrammaton, Tetragrammaton's all about creation, and things being born, like people coming out of people coming out of people as like a fractal. And like that's what Tetragrammaton really speaks to is the principle of emanation and the idea of creation is formation, the way things come into form. And so for something to be a reversal of that, they attribute that to like the death penalties. So they're like the death penalty, like, and so it makes sense. And in the military, it's like your gun is your dick. Like everything gets substituted. It's a substitute reality. And so like that, yeah, I guess my point is that the programming goes way back. Like you mentioned earlier, Andreas, when you're talking about the military, how this connects to like what like Sparta or like Rome or like there's an actual like system at play that's applied, and like people don't realize it because we treat it that this is just this military and that military and whatever.
You know,
but
the inverse could be
formulas.
true too. Like I don't know if it's a chicken and egg kind of thing, but it could be like warfare being assigned to like sexual acts, but also the other way around where like, people say like they have a body count. You know what I mean? Or it's like I'm gonna murder that or.
There you go. Absolutely. Where there's something violent about it. I remember I used to drive these guys in the cab to take them to the Red Room downtown. I'm saying this because Andreas is here and you know what I'm talking about. But they're from UCSC. So it's like a bunch of college guys. I'm driving them down there. One guy in particular is just going off about how much pussy he's going to get that night. He's like, I'm getting laid tonight, bros. Da, 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 da. He's talking it all up. I drop him off. They call me up hours later they want to get picked up by the same person who dropped him off. So I come to pick him up. And while I'm waiting for him, some dude gets thrown on top of the hood of my cab and is getting fucking punched in the face. So I'm just like in the cab waiting for them to come out. And then I realize that the guy getting punched is the guy that was talking about how much pussy he was going to get. And then he's like, they're like, get in the car, bro, get in the car. And so like, I just like, I know it wasn't proper, like to just like leave the scene of whatever was happening, but he was getting fucking, oh no, he was punching the other guy too. He got thrown on the hood of the cab, but like he was bruised, but the other guy was bruised too. No one won that fight. And they get in the cab and I'm driving along and I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, how is that pussy? Like, what happened to you, man? Like, did you just like, so like, I think but it spoke volumes about something really weird where it's like, he wasn't getting the thing that he was after. So he was going to like act out in this like really like primal way where it's like, he just needed, like, he wasn't getting this. Now it turns into fight. And I was like, dude, that phenomenon, like that is what war is as far as I'm concerned.
Well, he
it's
needed
like,
a climax of some kind, right? And if it wasn't going to be like a sexual climax, it was going to be a violent climax.
Yeah, that's what Dr. Strangelove is about, admittedly, by Kubrick. It's about sexual frustration. The whole thing is a buildup. From the first shot when they're fueling the plane, that's subliminal sex happening. The end of the movie, the bombs being dropped, that's the orgasm. Everything in between is a building of sexual tension. And the characters that are looking to get it on is America and Russia. So they're like basically just flirting with each other, but being super weird with each other because everything's a reversal of Tetragrammaton. And Kubrick thought that way, and he spoke that way, you know, in private, and you see evidence of that. He's very Kabbalistically minded.
Nikki Haley is not hot enough to sign a bomb. I'm sorry, that doesn't work.
Is she the one that killed the dogs, or was that
this is the Disney Star Wars of bomb signage right now. It's not the direction of the reboot.
What was
Are we
she
talking
like?
Acolyte signage?
Wasn't there a lot of talk about her being Trump's VP? Isn't that something that's supposedly on the table? And she's fucking signing bombs. And what did she write on the bomb when she signed it? Like, what
kill
did she
them
say?
all or something? I forgot.
It wasn't kill them all, but something like that. It was like or something. But
finish them.
Finish them. Yeah, it's Mortal Kombat.
Finish them. Yeah. All right. Okay. Over here. All right. Stop trying to make me like her. Okay. No. I don't think that we're in any danger though of Nikki Haley. I just think that that's the problem. Like this, like what we're looking at, like you just said, mass psychology of sexual frustration is being made worse by things like Nikki Haley. That's not the relief. That's not the relief valve. Right.
Yeah. I mean, it
is. There's like, if sexual frustration and frustration in general is something, then this is not the solution of release. Like this election. Right. Okay. We're getting more pressure this election, probably still.
Oh, perpetually. Right. I mean, that's the thing. It comes with the fall.
You don't think we're going to get like a Old Faithful at some point? Like,
I do. I think at some point that
sounds way worse than
levee's actually is gonna totally break. And like I'm not talking about like civil war necessarily. I'm just saying that like we've been putting all of our energy into something that isn't actually strong.
Dang
So,
it,
like,
Lucy,
we've been
you're right.
treating it
Finish
like it is.
him could sound, if it was finish him, that would be like a sexual thing. Finish them.
I don't like where this analogy is going though, because ultimately, if this whole country is coming to a climax and it's like sexual frustrations, and we've got what 80-year-old men that it's going to like. That's where the climax is going to happen between two 80-year-old.
That's the health of the kingdom. We got nothing left, dude. It's just this flaccid, fucking old, wrinkly, fucking. What the fuck is that even gonna? Is that gonna do anything? I don't know what that is. Bleh. You know,
we need some Teletubbies in the mix or something to keep it exciting.
Hear me out though, man. Hunter Biden could be the prodigal son that turns this thing around, because what is a more sort of virulent, like, you know, full of passion, full of gumption, like political adjacent person, like Barron? I mean,
Soros, yeah.
Barron Trump might be our last president.
I don't know. He seems asexual in a way. Hunter Biden does not seem asexual.
No, Barron seems like, I would love to see what Barron's gonna do. I think Mr. Beast, I forgot if I said this last time, but Mr. Beast in 8 years can be president, right? So I feel like as soon as he can, he should be. Like, that's all it comes down to. Mr. Beast should be the president. Like that.
I'm interested to know what Barron Trump does with his life. Like he's the one I'm the most interested in. I don't care about any of the others. Like he's the one that I'm like, I think he's going to do something really interesting. I don't know what it's going to be, but what he's had to grow up with. Like, can you imagine?
Yeah, he's another Krishnamurti.
Constantly fucking scapegoated all the fucking time, like where you'd go in your mind and how that will translate in the way he goes about in the world.
He's like the young Anakin Skywalker we wanted to see, you know, like if he grew up a little bit more.
He's so
like
tall.
a Colin Hanks, a little bit.
He's taller than both his parents. How the fuck did he get so tall? Was she like? I mean, Barron Trump, he's fucking tall, man, isn't he? Like, isn't that kid like?
Yeah, he's like
6 foot or something now.
Yeah, he's way taller than that. He's way taller.
He's taller than 6 feet. Oh my god, dude. Yeah, he's taller than me. He's fucking A.
He is 6'10". Yeah.
No.
Is he really 6'10"? No, he's not.
Wow.
He's 6'10".
Yeah.
Jesus
How dreamy.
Christ.
Yeah, he's super tall, dude. Like he's a giant. Yeah, I don't know. Look at he's a Nephilim. It's gonna be awesome.
If you wanted to start a new empire, this is usually the kind of genetics that you would want to start it with. Like, even if it's just first symbolically.
Is Melania that tall? How tall is Melania?
I don't know. Not 6'10".
Yeah, I don't think she's 6'10" either.
5'11". Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Exactly. What the fuck, kid? What did you just get some? Is that some kind of eugenics thing with Nephilim blood? Oh, where'd he go? He's definitely zip.
The 6 fingers would peg him as a Nephilim guaranteed, because I've understood that that's the other portion of it.
Is that a thing? I'm not familiar with the Nephilim having 6 fingers. Where'd you see that? Or are you just saying
I didn't make it up, although I don't know if it's really a thing, but I've definitely seen it more often. That it's like one of those telltale. And I mean, on the topic of Nephilim, since Andreas isn't here and he can't keep us on topic, I heard this like really interesting concept that and this was in relation to the tent, right? The curse of Ham. Because my favorite topic, but he was actually implying that it wasn't that the act in the tent was the thing that got him in trouble. That Ham / Cain, whatever.
Right.
There's interpretations that it might be the same person, but that it wasn't the act that got him in trouble, but it's that act was representative of Nephilim behavior, and he kind of outed himself as having like Nephilim DNA, and that was why he got the curse. Like that was the real mark
with the sacrifice. You're saying with the plant versus the offering of animal food. So are you talking about Cain and Abel?
No.
You're talking about Ham in the first place with when they go into the tent, he's naked and the whole thing.
And it wasn't the act of what he did in the tent that was necessarily the offense. The offense was that he even thought of it, was capable of it, because that was something that was attributed to like Nephilim behavior.
Totally. Yeah. There's a whole argument for that. There's also a similar argument to the golden ox in the first place, the golden calf, excuse me, that what it wasn't that they were just worshiping, having another god and doing this whole thing. It's that, motherfuckers, you just got liberated from this place and you're playing out a recreation of what it is that you had there. So you're doing Egyptian type stuff, like not just that, but like Egyptian elite stuff, and like kind of like what like that was the real problem
You can
with
take
it,
them
not
out of
just
the
that they were
hood,
doing it.
but you can't take the hood out of them.
Yeah, totally. Interesting. Yeah, that's a weird verse. Like that verse feels like when I look at like the diary of what's Hunter's daughter's name when she admitted that was her diary, and she said
Natalie, I can't remember the name.
yeah, like that to me feels kind of similar somehow.
So apparently, if we talk about anything like the Nephilim, they pull me out.
For real?
No, I'm just kidding. That'd be cool though.
The actual Nephilim pull him out.
No, the 6-finger thing is cool though, right? Because like Chronicles of Pride, and you have the 6-fingered man in Princess Bride. There's
Yeah, I was about to say, you killed my father, prepare to die. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot to that idea. Also, like the second jaw, right? And there's that whole idea that people that need their wisdom teeth pulled or something like this, or
And also all of the cultures that had like a base 12 numerical system versus like the base 10. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah.
which makes way more sense anyway. I don't know.
The
You have a video.
original people had 8, and that's why we've got like 16 and 32 and 64.
Yeah, so we're gonna go. We're
Disney people. Yeah,
we want to go directly from this to an episode of Meta Egg, and so Will sent me this link, and I think he's saying to put it in the chat or something, or so that people can easily go over there. But yeah,
that's a good plan. So the next episode of the Scissor G, where we look at episodes of David Plate's synchromystical work, where you watch a film that has music. This is Yoko Ono with, I think, Pink Floyd's Dark Side. No, this is Sean Lennon's album.
No, this is so there's the film The Haunting of Julia, also known as Full Circle, which starred Keir Dullea, who was David Bowman in 2001: A Space Odyssey, alongside Mia Farrow, who was Rosemary's Baby. Rosemary's Baby 2001 came out the same year. In this movie, they have a child who chokes on a green apple, and there's all the symbolism involved in this movie. And so basically I paired it with years ago with Double Fantasy, which was John Lennon's last album and his first posthumous album, Milk and Honey, and the Instant Karma EP. So those are the same length as the film. So anyway, we're going to be discussing that, me and Will, for like 2 hours, I think. So anyway, putting that out there.
Yeah, so everybody make sure you get the link and you follow this right after. That'd be a thing to do. Paranoid American, also, what have you been up to?
I mean, the NASA comics been going. The Chaos Twins has been going. There's another one too that I haven't been talking about it enough. If you go to moldcomic.com, MOLD comic.com, this one's on the horizon, but it's like it's ready to go. And it's essentially about this is like based on a true story. I had this lunch lady that it was in my first high school before I got expelled, went to my second one. My first high school, this lunch lady was like her name was Norma, and she had like this little like weird bird face, but she was like the sweetest old lady, but everybody was so mean to her. And in fact, there was this one day that someone threw like a full Pepsi can like straight at, like she was someone's grandma, you know what I mean? And I didn't know her personally or anything, but I had developed this entire like plot in my mind that like, oh, she started going to this school to stay close with her grandkids, but the grandkids worked themselves through school and they moved on and they became crappy kids, and like her husband was a piece of shit, and like all of the family that she was around was all like really horrible, and now she's just surrounded by these kids as a reminders of like, I moved here, I moved my entire life to be with kids, and these kids hate me and they're horrible to me. So that was like the basic premise for the main character. And the storyline is that she has this toenail fungus that becomes sentient, and it starts telling her to like get revenge against these middle schoolers, which is like kind of like, you know, this old lady going against them. But then it turns into a much deeper story where the mold that's on her toenail isn't just a figment of her imagination. It actually opens up and can connect with the rest of the mycelium around the planet. And she kind of taps into this like universal consciousness, a little like Paul Stammet esque. And she learns that there's like select people all across the world that are tasked with kind of like fighting back against this reptilian behavior from like horrible, people that seeps into mammals, and that. So the reason it's based on a true story is that it's based on a real lunch lady and some of the real things that I saw happen to her. And I always just imagine, what if Norma got her revenge? What would she do to these kids? So this is kind of
God, dude! Is this a personal thing? Are you talking about a personal experience with a lunch lady, or is this a story?
A little bit, yeah, man. I mean, I was right there in the thick of it. Like I knew people that were throwing like cans of this poor lady. I never did one myself, but
dude,
I've got a lot of stories about this lady.
I like what you do because it reminds me of like a psychedelic conspiracy version of like Harvey P. Carr, where it's just like you have the conception and then you have people that kind of like help you play it out. Like that's pretty cool gig, man. Like,
I still think about that poor lady all the time.
Yeah, like he would just do it with stick figures. Harvey P. Carr would, and then like R. Crumb and other artists would create whatever it was that because they'd have the speech bubbles. Here's the premise, and then it comes to life in art, But like he put, I don't know. I like that.
I think you'll like it. It's really good. There's 4 issues that are already pretty much done. They're in the backlog. I can only release so many at one time.
That's awesome.
That's pretty fair. What do you think is going to be the next major predictive programming, like natural disaster, human warfare thing? Are we going to have like something in Israel, or should we how should we do it from now on? Should we like throw dots at like a map? Like, should we like do some divination like with a roulette board? Like, how should we like figure out like,
is this hard copy and blank man? What's happening?
We should start making like hot take calls of like what we think the next major thing.
Hear me out. Hallmark holiday movies.
Oh yeah. I don't have to hear you out. I'm immediately on board.
Because I feel like that's one of the very few things that people would put on and just let it program them in the background, and it would be so innocuous.
I have some friends who acted some of the Hallmark holiday movies in LA. I don't know. I was thinking more along the lines of like Trump was talking about, he wanted to run on removing taxes or income tax and just having tariffs. I don't think he'd really do it, but that'd be sweet if he ran on that platform, right? That'd be cool. Like the idea of getting rid of income tax and having everything be tariffs. And the other one was amnesty for all illegals, right? Which is cool. Or I mean, for all undocumented workers. So then that would be pretty interesting. I don't know. What do you think is going to be more?
Well, speaking of Trump just making weird unilateral decisions like that, they just reversed the bump stock ban that he pushed after. That along with the brace rule, which are pretty big, although they're already like David Hogg is already trying to push back, and we'll see what happens out of all this.
They already have like workarounds for that bump stock thing anyway.
Yeah, it's called a belt loop.
Yeah. So what it's like feels like it was nothing
purely symbolic, but the part that stings so much is that Trump kind of offered that up as like a sacrificial. Like take this, get off our back.
It's the compromise,
But in exchange for what? There's never an exchange. The only exchange was to take a little bit of heat off of him in the short term.
We might not know the exchange.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, our exchange is the collective we, me particularly.
Yeah, I mean, he got an exchange from fucking Pfizer when he got $1 million right before he fired RFK from the vaccine task force. And like basically like that, and people will say, "Oh, well, he put all these other people in charge." Well, he hired those motherfuckers. He hired Bolton. He hired Pompeo. The thing with Pompeo, with like the he wanted to release the JFK files supposedly, but like we got like 80% redacted. Like it's nothing. Like there's no new information there. It's just like really. Like I don't know.
They're still living people, right? Until everyone's like long dead and gone, there's no chance that stuff's gonna come out.
I don't think they'll do it anyway. Willingly, Like I don't think they'd give that up for anything because they don't want to consider how the same formulas, they redo the same shit again and again. It's like there's a format to how they do it, and so if you were to just spill the beans with that, no one would ever trust them again. Like
I don't know. I think they're audacious. Like, have you ever watched Mission Impossible from 1988? Because
many times, right?
Yeah, the whole point of the show is like, I mean, remember
1988? No,
yeah, the original. Well, it's not the original. I think the 60s.
The original's in the 70s with fucking the guy from Stalag 17.
I think 60s, but the 80s version's really good. The point is,
is it really? Oh, there he is. That's the same guy. Okay, never mind.
One of the best shows ever. And what they do is they're like, these are actual events. These are actual missions that they went on, and you're all like, no, there's no way that they had. Why would, like, what crazy BYU theater students became CIA agents that they had to do all this makeup and theater and like gaslight? Like every episode is about them gaslighting someone into thinking they're somewhere that they aren't, and that these are people that they're not. And I mean, it's just crazy. Like the amount of work that they go into to convincing people of another false reality. Like, oh, we'll build another bank that looks like the bank, and we'll make them think they're at the bank they work at every day. Like what the heck kind of crazy? No, like it's insane. Like it's completely insane. But they're like every single mission, it's beyond Dragnet. You know, these are real stories theoretically.
Well, dude, look at Mission Impossible 2, the movie. That was literally the year 2019 played out. Like it's about a chimera virus that they create in a lab, right? And then it's like put out through a group called the IMF, which isn't the International Money Fund, but it basically is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It has so many. I have this this whole theory that I'm going to be going into rewatching some of the Mission Impossible movies.
That's
awesome. I think I mentioned this earlier that they're all just disclosures. There's Snow White disclosures from Tom Cruise. Like here's what they found in the CIA raid.
Yeah. Right. Is it Tom Cruise, and is it that he's doing productions where the people who are putting even all the money for it and producing and having all like I feel like all of those people are kind of like on a similar tip. Like, you know, that Tom Cruise is like having his like brotherly connections with his fellow triangles.
Plus he's like OT8, so he just, you know, without any Thetans, he just knows the truth.
Hasn't he gone to clear?
Yeah,
that was the funniest thing, was when he was freaking out. There's a recording of Tom Cruise where he's having a meltdown on the set, like in 2020 or 2021.
Which makes a lot of sense if you're a producer and you're putting that much money into a movie and they're going to shut down the movie and you have to pay everyone.
He's justified in his reaction, but it's like the way he's talking about the whole thing. He shouts at everybody, goes, "Am I clear?" And I'm just like, dude, is that lost on him? Did he think about that when he said that? Like, I don't know. Are you?
He's definitely. Am I clear?
He's definitely saying that on purpose. Yeah, like everything he says is like conscious. Every word he uses is fully he's so concerned about precision of language. There's no circumstance where he's using a word he would normally use. Like every word he knows is redefined. He's a completely new vocabulary. It's like he learned a new language beyond French or English, essentially.
Yeah. I feel bad. I didn't want to see Memory Man go, and I wasn't trying to be a dick to him.
Did Memory Man leave?
Like, what? No, I haven't seen anything else from him. He's like one of our regular guys, and I tend to like agree with everything that he fucking says. But we hit a point where it's really charged because he doesn't like the shit that RFK says about.
I think he's probably still here. He's probably just like smoking.
I just want to say a peace to him and to anyone else who might be offended. I love to talk about this stuff, and I do it all day online. You know,
I think it's adorable that you believe in humanity. I love it when people believe in each other.
I want to vote. I don't want to vote out of fear if I'm going to vote at all.
Yeah.
I'm not, you know, like, and it's all this like weighing what it is that people are fucking about. And like, I've seen what these guys can do. Like, I saw what Biden can do, and it sucks. I saw what Trump can do, and honestly, personally, I'm not impressed. Like, I'm just not. I'd like to be, but I can't jump on the Trump train like that. If people can, then do your thing, man. Like, vote for who you want, you know, and like, and
or don't
talk about, or don't vote at all. Like, I would rather, like, and I really don't have a problem with him after he, like, even though he's upset about these aspects of RFK, like, I don't mind, like, especially knowing that he's like, oh yeah, fuck those other two guys. I'm like, okay, well, at least we can go there. Like, you know, because it's like, I feel like it's just the two guys from the fucking Muppet Show and the balcony, and we're all like supposed to be like, oh, I like this guy. I'm just like, dude, I don't want to watch a fucking debate without RFK, even on an entertainment level. Like, not even like on a, like, you know.
No, I mean, it really is RFK versus Trump, right? Like, that's kind of the goal.
It is. That's what the polls are showing. And that RFK beat.
I've never. This is the first I'm hearing of this.
So there's the most extent. There's two of the largest polls that have been done, which have the highest, accounting for,
just watch Biden poop his pants. All you got to do is see Biden poop his pants.
He's sitting down
people
here.
Want this? This is what we want.
No, I think people are so tired of Biden that they're showing. You think so? I think
yeah,
there's
absolutely.
I thought that they're trying to show all this all over the world so that people are like, okay, all right, now we know America definitely needs to pick a new president. Are you sure you don't want Trump? Like Trump is totally fine compared to this, right? I think they're getting people prepared for the idea that like, yeah, we got to get Trump back because this is crazy.
Dude, he needs to be in like a rocking chair by a fire with a blanket and a dog, and
At
just
least
like
from all these
chilling.
angles, right? From these
Yeah,
angles,
so he can go to the bathroom on his own time and doesn't have to fucking stand there
I
and have to
still think
shit.
this could be the Gene Wilder Willy Wonka act, man. At the last second, they pump him up full of pro vigil, and he's up for like 3 days, just knocking it out of the park.
I hope so because when Mr. Beast runs, bro, like, because what do you ask a 100-year-old man, like what a 90-year-old candidate, like an 80-year-old president, like you ask them like, do they want their wheelchair facing towards the window or away from the window?
Towards
Like
the east.
you need to have a 35-year-old president, and I think that might be the release that comes. And I think that'll be really synchronistic with when the new king arrives in Britain, right? Probably.
I liked a couple of things that Andrew Yang had to say. I don't think he'd make a good president. I don't think he's qualified. But I
think that's the point.
I like that he confronted automation. And like no one else is fucking talking about it. And that's the thing that gets me is I'm like, there's certain things that like they're not talking about. It's like, why aren't they talking about that? Like that's major shit that's happening no matter what. It's already happening. So like you just
the fact that I think that's kind of the point, like maybe to Thomas's point, like they do want, like having Biden as president shows you how powerful your automation is, your economy is, that it's so automated that you can even have no one running the system theoretically, even though like
you have a hologram that's very Philip K. Dick, but
you have the cabinet and everything else, like, but the commander in chief itself, like could you just build something around it, right?
Like Biden to me is the perfect white glove. Like Donald Trump was the opposite of a white glove. He's the glove that's got like like crap smeared on it, and you go up to like meet them because he would start things. He would be like a catalyst for stuff. Could you imagine how frustrating and like a Kafka-esque scenario that you're actually relying on the US or you're negotiating some kind of like a war style deal with them, and they send Biden, they send the actual president to talk to you? It would be like, what do you do? Like, do you ask for someone with more power? You can't, because that's like the ultimate faux pas. So now if they send you Biden, like you kind of know you're screwed. Like, oh crap, they're not playing ball at all here.
Literal crap. There's crap involved.
Yeah.
Well, that was the Trump analogy, is that Trump would be like the glove with like a little bit of crap on the edge, and Biden's just like the white glove, nothing else.
I don't know if it's true or not, but people are saying there's like Brown Gate, where it's like people are saying that when they're standing close to Trump, they just smell shit. And I think there's probably something to that, if just for the fact that these people are having to fucking stand around and they don't really get bathroom breaks a lot of the time, and they're old at the same time. So he's 77.
I feel like he'd have people. He'd have little people with like little power washers or something.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, but no, it's possible. I'm sorry, I shouldn't even have said that. What do I know? People say, I could say about anybody, I
asked Tim. I wonder now. I'm curious. If it's like Hillary, do they smell like fire and brimstone? What does Alex say? I don't know. I think that the point is, though, we're getting to this culmination where either Trump or Biden will be, it's like the same thing. So we need to move away from that one way or another. And we're about to hit do you think there's any truth at all to the idea that Trump couldn't act in the first 4 years because of whatever reason? Like all the things he did wrong were because he couldn't do the right thing. Like there's all these systems in check to keep him from doing it.
He hired the wrong people. I can tell you that.
Keep your enemies close. Nothing.
I mean, Obama hired the wrong people too, and I could go off for 20 minutes at least on like the main people that he appointed and what's wrong with them.
I feel like there has to be a massive feeling when you get in there where it's just like you think you got hired to be the guy that operates the machine, and then you're just like, oh crap, this machine just runs itself. But like you can't say that out loud too much, because that might be the thing that would unravel things.
That's truer than it used to be, I think. My guess is, and I think that a big shift happened with W, where it was just like that was Dick Cheney was busy. He was doing a lot, And W was just kind of like, you know, just the PR guy to stand there and be like, you know, I don't know, what the fuck, you know, and like it worked out well for the people that were really, you know, getting their hands dirty while he was president. Just to have that kind of like show president where it's just like, and people can argue over what they say or how dumb what they said was or whatever. It's just like the media played off of that. And it seems like they just set something in motion that was already there before, but it like just really, it intensified. It's like a snowball effect, you know, where it's like, oh, now we don't, it doesn't even matter. We're just arguing over what this person said and lose track of what they did, you know?
Well, I got nothing.